Hey there, welcome to the channel. Today I will be doing a chapter analysis on the second chapter of my original story, Caught in Your Embrace, which is a romantic comedy detailing the married life between a gang leader and her wife, who is a rising star in the police force. This second chapter will be in part 2 of the introduction, where I set the tone for the rest of the series, where you can check out chapter 1 with the link in the description and read it yourself, or check out the video which can be found on my channel. But without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so chapter 2 goes off right from when chapter 1 finishes. So Vivian, who is the gang leader of the Rose Chain, which you should know about if you've read the first chapter, she finally gets back home, and she has clearly been wounded by the gunshot that Evelyn had fired in the previous chapter, as noted through the sharp pain. Now this is a two-parter, so it is meant to leave off very clearly from this first chapter, and I do not want to, and I expect most people to read these in quick succession. That's why I do not have to re-establish too much context, as opposed to most of my other works where I have to re-establish context a lot because they are all one-shots. This one has a clear flow of the story, so I do not need to re-establish scenes as often, especially in a two-parter. Now, after that, I want to ensure that the characters seem very alive, so I want to describe their physical sensations to the reader so that they are able to understand and more perfectly imagine and visualize the happenings of the scene. And following that, a lot of this is more characterization to demonstrate who Vivian is as an individual. Also, I sort of do a deep contrast between her as a notorious gang leader and who she is in a private life, trying to add more into the comedic layering by having this really big, tough, seductive individual going back home, and it's like a more floral pattern that you might associate with maybe your grandparents' house or something. It seems very unassuming and more of a sudden issue. Now, following that, and I display even more characterization through how she relaxes when she gets back home, which is her like kicking off her shoes, getting relaxed, and I begin to draw some parallels between the fact that Vivian and Evelyn might have something, or at least hinting towards that Vivian has a relationship, by drawing contrast with certain things. Like, she's clearly shown to be very relaxed and chill and not the most organized, but they're next to her stuff and clothes inside the closet is a perfectly ironed workplace standard navy coat, which doesn't seem to fit her vibe and hints towards the fact that there's something more going on within the scene. Following that, in order to add a bit more comedic and just add more depth to her character as an individual, I have her wear some pink cat slippers because I thought that'd be like a fun little tidbit of information. And tying into more of this rose symbolism that will definitely be explained more in further chapters, is I have a scent of rose wash over her, and hinting towards some more stuff as well. I continue to allow the reader to greater understand the character's physical ailments by doing some more descriptive work, and then I continue to build on the character. I will say that I'm building and developing the character a lot, and that is important because these are characters that have not been fleshed out, do not have a pre-existing IP, and will be continued to be seen later, and it's important to characterize them now so that people who are interested within the story can continue to read the story and are not surprised by anything, and it will not negatively impact their experience. So I continue to hint towards the fact that there is something going on, and by hinting to the fact that she had to stash away some of her alcohol, which hints towards maybe someone keeps taking away her alcohol, or you can interpret it as she just has backup alcohol for whenever she might run out, which it makes it harder to decode the fact that these two are in a relationship for the people who have not read the chapter. After that, I do a bit more of letting her just collapse and fall. After all, she's had a long day, so that I can more easily move on to the second half of this chapter. This is a relatively short chapter, but I think it does a lot of work and important, and is meant to just be mainly a reveal chapter to set the tone for the rest of the story. So I have Evelyn. She begins to drive back home after a hard day of work. After all, she has to file reports as a police officer, and she has to explain why she fired her weapon. And I hint towards, once again, the relationship. Again, this chapter is mainly just to build up suspense to do the reveal at the end, in which they are married. So I continue to build up suspense by saying that she is worried about what Vivian might be doing, which is important because in one interpretation you could be saying, oh, she thinks that a notorious criminal is still on the loose and they could be doing things. But if you look at it from a second perspective of, if you reread the chapter, you can interpret it as her chaotic little gremlin of a wife is doing something at their home and she doesn't know what to expect. That is the second interpretation that you can have after reading this chapter for a second time. So when you do a twist, you always want to make sure that it adds to the story a second time instead of taking it away, to make sure that your readers want to continue to reread. And here's where I draw a lot of the enhancement of the chapter and layering on a lot of the hints towards and building the suspense towards the fact that they are together, or by making note of a bunch of things that I did in the first half of the chapter. In the first half, I note that she gives the door a small push to close it, and in the second half, I note that the door hasn't actually been fully closed because the push was too light. After that, I make a note of how there was a nice, neatly ironed jacket, and how Vivian hung her leather coat next to it, and next to it I make a note that that was Evelyn's backup jacket. After, I also have a quick moment to quickly establish more characterization and contrast between the two individuals as Vivian kicks off her shoes and Evelyn is the one to reorganize the shoes. I also bring back the cat slippers because I think it'd be a fun little occurrence, and I might have these drawn as well later. And after that, I have the confrontation between the two and build this sort of suspense, because if you haven't read the chapter and you're reading it for the first time, you'll have this understanding of, wait, Evelyn and Vivian are in the same house right now. And then I have this very suspenseful moment where I build it up. I said if it had been anyone else, they would have called the cops. If it were one of her colleagues, they would have detained her. Right? So I do this sort of double layering. And then I say, but instead of either of those, Evelyn let out an uncharacteristic smile before creeping forward. This builds up the suspense and it tones it down a little, but it still maintains a bit of tension within the reading. After that, I have her go close and I do a little, I have her playfully flick Vivian on the head, showing more character depth, as the reader might not assume that Evelyn, who I've currently portrayed as a very uptight, rigid person, to do a little playful flick on someone, especially a criminal. But it adds more depth to her as an individual. I give her a very intimidating introduction as Evelyn and Vivian, and this is where I slowly pull back the curtain because I have her say, "Hey there, honey," which is more of an endearing term. And finally, I have the final reveal where it says her wife. Now this is the first chapter, obviously, or second chapter, and there will obviously be a lot more chapters to come. Please tell me how you like these chapter analyses. Tell me how I can improve it, and tell me what else you want to see from these two characters, because this is just the introduction and there's a lot more to come. But without further ado, check it out and read it yourself if you haven't already with the link in the description, and come back later for chapter 3.